The recovery process continues following the passage of the recent tropical wave. Teams are still working throughout the territory to get infrastructure and other facilities back in place. In this presentation, we focus on the recovery process in the area of health with emphasis on the health infrastructure, vector control, and waste management.
With the People's Hospital, with the outage of the electricity, the generator would have kicked in about 10 seconds after, so things went well over there.
Ms. Tasha Bertie is the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Social Development. She's also the ministry's representative on the Recovery Task Force, set up to, among other things, coordinate actions among agencies involved in the recovery process and reduce vulnerability to hazards in the future. According to Ms. Bertie, health facilities in the territory did not sustain any damage following the floods.
There were instances where the staff relief could not come in. There were some instances where the police actually assisted in getting persons to the hospital to change shifts, but there were also instances where persons actually had to continue shifts. So we're really grateful for the support given and the diligence shown by the staff at People's Hospital during that period. So I want to commend them on behalf of the PSM Minister for their diligence in continue to support the efforts at the hospital service.
Following the passage of the wave, the Recovery Task Force was formed to focus on the transition from immediate response to short-term recovery. Under this task force, the Ministry of Health and Social Development was tasked with providing a schedule for waste collection and an assessment of areas that might be affected by vectors.
Immediately after the storm, we had the waste management team who basically focused on dealing with the collection of the residential waste as well as the bulky waste. That was their main focus initially right after the storm. There were some instances where we had some derelict vehicles that were impeding traffic on the roads and so forth, so they also addressed those areas. And following that, they were dealing with mostly the mud and debris that had collected in the drains along the main roads. So that has been their focus for the last week or so, and persons would have seen them in the communities on the main roads, especially in town, scraping up the mud that had caked on the streets. So that's been a focus there, and then they're working also now on the sweeping. As a result of once the caked mud has been removed, then the street sweeper, which we have available with the department, has been focusing on getting the streets clean. So that has been a focus throughout Road Town. It should be noted, of course, that there were some instances where we may have had some bulky waste also from the main guts, in some of the guts. And that, of course, would have been some illegal stuff there. But that was not the bulk of the waste that would have been collected. You mostly had persons who would have left damaged products like washers and bed mattresses and so forth would have been left at the actual dump sites. And those were the ones that would have been collected and taken to the incinerator plant.
Ms. Bertie said territory-wide fogging has commenced from the Terence B. Lettsome International Airport at Beef Island to Queen Elizabeth Bridge and will continue to the Rotong Pasir areas and King Garden Bay. The Acting Permanent Secretary said among the issues which arose following the flood is that of mosquito vector control.
One of the things we would want persons to recognize, and as individuals within our own communities, businesses, or homes, we also have to bear some responsibility. We think that our ponds and guts actually are producing the vectors, but they don't necessarily produce in those areas. So we have to look at what we are doing within our own homes and outside of our homes that are actually causing these mosquitoes to be able to produce the way that they are. So that's something that we need to be mindful of as members of our communities. We need to do our searches of our residents outside, lift up the tires and the drums that we have around and empty them out, make sure that we're not actually securing and encouraging the breeding of these mosquitoes.
The Department of Waste Management is primarily responsible for the collection and disposal of solid waste. Waste Officer Mr. Adan Doward said following the floods, it was recognized that a lot of the garbage came from illegal dump sites.
With the recovery efforts, we had to work around the clock overtime, being that the excess trash, like I mentioned before, that would come from illegal dump sites throughout the territory, not reported, and those that are reported and continue to be a problem. It caused an unsightly site in the territory. It degraded our natural beauty, not because of the excess litter, but where the litter was hidden for these years and the water brought it out. Our guys really did an excellent job in putting in the overtime, no questions asked. They came out in the AM to the PM. Whatever we asked them to do, they did, and they were at the forefront of recovering the beauty of the territory.
Mr. Doward said the residential bins are placed for residents to deposit their household waste and that it is illegal to place bulky waste at these sites.
To place washers, dryers, construction materials and so forth, carpets around the bin is illegal and can be fined by the government $500 if you do so. I would take this moment to reach out to the public and say that we heavily rely on tourism, and these bins are located in various locations around the territory. So to leave old washers, mattresses, etc., anything that falls into the category of bulky waste is not only unsightly, but it is not pleasing to the tourism industry. It's also illegal, definitely. I understand the frustrations that occurred with the floods. Many persons are helter-skelter, and they decide to dispose these things to the nearest bin because they're trying to sort out their next move. However, the bulky waste issue has been an issue and a recurring issue for various bins around the territory, and we would plead with the public, or I would like to plead with the public on behalf of my department at this time that I have, to refrain from doing so.
The waste officer said that it is everyone's responsibility to keep the British Virgin Islands clean, and further highlighted how our actions can impact the tourism industry.
A large part of the tourism aspect comes from tourists chartering boats and going sailing and trying to experience the pristine waters of the British Virgin Islands. It is our responsibility as British Virgin Islanders to keep the BVI clean and green, and we can't think about now, we have to think about the future generations, and we have to set an example for them. So we need to start at the top and work our way down, and also do it in the other order so that we can curb the problem completely.
The government and the people of the Virgin Islands will continue to work to rebuild that which was damaged by Mother Nature. The responsibility rests with each resident to do his or her part to ensure that the transition back to full normality is done as soon as possible. Let us continue to stand together as one BVI in the face of adversity and challenges.